How do you think? How do you actively, consciously direct and manage your thoughts to solve extreme problems? Over the past 30 years, I've had the opportunity to start a number of companies and created products like the Leapfrog LeapPad, a LiveScribe Smart Pen, other devices. Across these companies and inventions, I've had the opportunity to identify some pretty extreme, radical ways of thinking at times. I'd like to share 9 ideas with you today, and I'd like to etch them indelibly in your mind. That's my challenge, so that next time you have a problem or you're in a creative task, they spring forth and you'll remember some of these. So we'll see how we do. So number one, find the right PTS. PTS, anyone know? Problem to solve. Excellent. So the most difficult problems are those most poorly defined. And if you define a problem clearly and articulate it, it frequently the answer presents itself. Einstein, as you may know, ostensibly said, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd take 55 minutes for the problem, 5 minutes for the solution. So I have a daunting challenge from a number of years ago. So I'll ask you if you remember this. So does any people recognize this? Okay, we got a few. So this is a Leapfrog LeapPad, and it works for children by allowing them to touch images or words, and I'll turn this on and it'll start talking, and you'll be able to get feedback. And it works by knowing how to map the sounds to the images on the page. They're shaping. So the engineers were solving a problem. The problem was, how do we create a sensing technology to know what page the child is on? And they thought for months and worked on optical technology, magnetic technology, couldn't find a way to come up with it. So I pulled the team together and said, what problem are we solving? Asked that question. And they said, well, we need to know with 99.99% accuracy what page this book is open to. I said, one word, the magic word. Why? Always ask that. At which point they said, well, because we need to map the sound to the page. We need to know what page we're on. And I said, you said nothing about sensing technology. You talked about knowing the page. What if and then we started to talk, and we said, well, let's see, how could we know the page? Well, we got a child playing with it. Maybe the child could tell us the page. So we said, well, how about that? So we put these little green go circles along the side, and the way this works is they're in different unique positions. And each time you touch a go circle, it tells the system what page you're on. So you said, great. But what if the child forgets to touch the go circle, and they start to touch the wrong page? So for instance, I'll turn this on. You'll hear what happens. So I'll touch the go circle, and I'll touch some words. Oh, here we go. I'll put it down so you can see it. I'll turn the volume up a bit.
The top one here.
So you can see I touch now. Imagine, though, that the child somehow, and I'm doing this in a funny way right now, they turn the page, or the page is in the wrong place. By the way, I don't need the book in there, and I can still touch.
It wiggles, leap.
It's not the paper. It's where the position of the objects are. That's the magic. So the child takes a book out, they put it back in, and they start touching, and they touch right here, and they hear
Wiggles.
That's not wiggles. So we have to make sure the child touches the go circle. What if they don't? That's a different problem to solve. And I'll tell you, the solution to that problem was worth $1 billion. $1 billion. Because without that, we had no way to make this work for children. So what do? Think about it. We said, okay, you need to know what page, not what page a child's on. They're going to tell us. What we need now is solve the problem of, did they turn the page? That's a different problem to solve. So we said, let's design this so the system has a sensor that tells us whether they turned a page. That's different. So what we did, if you look at this is recessed here. So really the only easy way to turn a page is to reach in the upper left or right corner. If you see up in the top, you see the little well right there? Okay? Well, so it's designed, so the only easy way to do it is to put your finger up there, and when I do, watch what happens. Did you hear the sound? There's a sensor that determines my finger went there. Once we know that,
Touch the green go circle to keep playing.
it tells me to touch the go circle on this page, and if I don't...
Oops, you forgot to touch the go circle.
That was my voice back 15 years ago, by the way. So now I touch the go circle, and now...
Leap had the fix. Bye-bye.
Now we have a solution that helped 100 million kids and was $1 billion. So find the right PTS, problem to solve. Thanks. I shut that off, right?
Bye-bye.
So, number 2. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. 2, wallow in novelty. So when's the last time you heard something that was very novel, and what did you do with it? You may have thought about it a little while. Most people think, oh, wow, that's cool. They move on, tell a friend, and they move on. What I'd like you to do is when you get something completely novel, stop, freeze, and wallow in it like a pig wallows in cold mud on a hot day. Indulge yourself. And then abstract what it is that's unique to you about that problem. What's the concept? Why is it novel to you? Stop and reflect. And then the most important thing is once you figure out what that abstraction is, apply that idea to your reservoir of problems, which I'll speak about. The problems in mind, one by one, even if it has nothing to do with the idea, like a well and figuring out a problem like this. Take that or whatever's novel. So it turns out also that when your brain is exposed to something absolutely novel, recent research, you release dopamine. And this dopamine motivates you to learn, and it supports learning. So if you want to learn better and memorize, continue to expose yourself to novel things. So I'd like to release some dopamine. I'd like to try. This is tricky. So here we go. We have a problem to solve. We have 3 ramps that come down, flatten out. One of them is a dip, one is flat, one's a hump. Imagine 3 marbles start here and they roll down. They go along here. The question is, which will get to the end first? So how many people think it'll be the dip? Few. How many people think it'll be the flat one? How many people think it'll be the hump? A few. Okay, how many think it'll be a tie? Okay, I'm going to change the problem and make it a little simpler. I'm going to take out the flat one. We're just going to do the dip and the hump. Okay? How many tie? Okay. Okay, let's keep going from here. And how many dip, I should ask? How many hump? All right. So here we go. I've got 2 marbles. And this is the trickiest part of what I do here because they might fall off. So bear with me. Put a marble here. I'm just going to do the top and the bottom, the dip and the hump. Focus on these. And here we go. Aha. The dip got there first. What happened? They all came down. They were going the same velocity. They got to the flat part at the same time. They got to the start of the dip and hump the same time. Then most people think, gee, goes down, the dip comes up. It's gain speed, loses speed. Or the other one slows down, speeds up. They're going to cancel each other out and come out the same. Or something else. But in fact, what happened, say it got here, and they're all 10 miles an hour perhaps. They're 10 miles an hour. This one speeds to 15, then slows to 10. This one starts at 10, slows to 5. Or maybe slower, and speeds up again. So since it slows down, it averages less. It goes slower over this hump than this one does through it, the same distance. So the dip will always get there first. If you're a bicyclist and you're riding in a race, take the dips. If you're a skier competitively, ski the dips, never the humps. You'll lose. And now we could abstract that here. Abstract it. Abstract the idea to business. Think about a business problem and say, gee, all things being equal, if I start out and I can go faster before slowing down versus slowing down and then speeding up, and my goal is to get to the end point first, I should speed up first. That's all things being equal. Does vary a bit, okay? So that's wallow in novelty. 3, fill your problem reservoir. Da Vinci, Edison, Bell, Tesla. What do they have in common? Inventions. What? They're prolific inventors. Prolific. So it turns out that the more you invent, it's a numbers game. The more you invent, the more likely you are to be successful. So if you want to be successful, keep more problems in your mind. Fill your problem reservoir. Keep them in mind. So I have a story to tell. My son, when he was 7, was riding with me in a car, and I looked over, and he was silent. And I said to Blake, what are you thinking about? What does a 7-year-old say? I don't know. So he said, I'm not sure. So he said, at that point, he was fascinated with building things, and he had a toolkit, and I just showed him how an adjustable wrench works. And he was fascinated with it. So I said, Blake, remember that adjustable wrench? I want you to think about it and come up with another tool that works faster and better than an adjustable wrench. We'd never seen a socket set or ratchet before. So he started thinking about it, and he thought, and I said, then, when you're thinking about that, I want you to come up with 2 more problems that are things that you like to think about that you can keep in your mind. And I want you to always have 3 there. And when you go to bed at night, pull one of them out of your mind, and as you're falling asleep, think about it. And when you wake up in the morning, pull one out, maybe the one you fell asleep thinking about, or same one, think about that. But I always want you to have 3. When you fix one, if you come up with an answer, put another one there. Well, 10 years later, he was falling asleep thinking about this nuclear book that he'd read and learned that nuclear radiation causes secondary radiation if it hits metal in a power plant. And he said, wow, what if I could use metal in a tumor and hit it with radiation and increase the density, the effectiveness of the radiation. And he went off and built a project. He brought in radiation in our house and built this thing, and he entered it into science fair. He ended up winning the Intel Science Fair, which is among 7 million kids on a global basis, and got the Gordon E. Moore Award from keeping a problem reservoir. So keep your problems in mind. Thank you. Keep your problems in mind. Let's see. Next one. Embrace your nemesis. In the martial arts Aikido, you learn to embrace and pull in the energy from your opponent and use it against them. Well, the same thing can apply with problem solving. If what you do is you look at a problem and you find the essence of what is really making it difficult for you to solve in that problem, and you think about that and use that to solve the problem, it can work. So here's an example. Need your help. Look at my fingers, if you will. In the back, you may need to hold them close, and if you're watching in video, you might hold them about 1.5 feet apart. Look at my right finger with your eyes. Don't move your head. Right finger there. Now look at my left finger. Now look at my right finger. And when I tell you to, I'd like you to move your eyes slowly, smoothly, and continuously from my right finger to my left finger in one smooth, continuous 3-second sweep. Ready? 3-second smooth sweep. Go. Okay, I'm watching some eyes in the front, and they're hopping. Now do it smoothly. Okay, you can't. It turns out you can't. It's a biological quirk. It's called a saccade. And not only that, but it's predictable distance. It takes about 40 milliseconds, 50 milliseconds for that distance. When I was founding iFluence, we were working on transforming intent into action through your eyes with eye tracking. And we wanted to be able to let you do anything you do with your finger on a smartphone with your eyes in a VR headset, but without blinking and without dwelling. And we came up with this idea. We were struggling for months. We couldn't figure it out because this saccade was a problem. Every time your eyes moved, they jerked someplace. We said, wait a second, let's embrace the nemesis. Let's use the saccade because it's predictable timing. So like the go circle, in our field of view, over on the right side, we put a green spot. The go circle, and we had a menu in the middle, and you could move your eyes around from item to item, and when you wanted to launch something, you moved your eyes from there to the green spot. And something else, when your eyes are moving in that period of time, you're technically blind. You can try this tonight. Look at your eyes in a mirror and see if you can see them moving from left to right. You can't see them. So what we did is your eyes move from the item, the menu item, to the green saccade. We'd take a small picture of it, put it over here, and when your eyes landed there, they'd come out of what's called saccadic suppression, and you'd see it, and it felt like it was reading your mind. It was unbelievable. So embrace your nemesis. Figure out the problem. Next, pretty quick and simple. Ban, can't, and impossible. These words are self-fulfilling. And my family and my companies, those words are taboo. We do not use them because they cut off conversation. If you think or say can't, or you think it's impossible, it is. So very simple, don't do it. Next, number 6, CAST, C-A-S-T. CAST, create acronyms to speed thinking. Stanislaus Dehaene, neurologist and mathematician, discovered that the average American English speaker can memorize a string, 50% memorize a string of 7 digits. That's it, just 7 digits. Whereas the average Chinese speaker can memorize a string of 9 digits. Why? Turns out that English digits, 1, 2, 3, 4, take about 1/3 of a second to speak, and Chinese digits are shorter, at 1/4 of a second, which means you can hold more in your short-term memory. If you keep that number and you phonologically loop that in your mind, you subvocalize, what happens is you can put more numbers there. Now, we use this in my company and teams all the time, and you've heard me say PTS, problem to solve. Well, PTS, problem to solve, I don't want to say problem to solve, it's too long, it takes too much time, so I say PTS. On the other extreme, imagine every time I wanted to describe a problem to solve, I said, well, the PROBLEMTOSOLVE is, our conversation would grind to a halt. Think about how many times when you're working with a team, brainstorming, you get this idea and you keep repeating this string of words. Collapse it. Make it short. Make a short utterance, whether it's an acronym or otherwise, and your efficiency and will improve. So, CAST, create acronyms to speed thinking. Here we go. Separate to solve. I need some help from Nicole and Keith, who will come on. So separate to solve. In 3rd grade, typically you learn to you break up word problems. And in doing so, you learn how to separate them. Well, as you become adults, we forget that a lot, and we end up with these big hairball problems that are just difficult. and we look at them, and we say, how do I do this? And you can't solve it. So I'd like to have you take some practice at separating to solve. Okay, here we go. So here's the challenge. Here we've got Vitruvian Man from Da Vinci. We'll call him V for short, because I like shortness. We've got a V with red hair and a V with not with the plane down here. My question to you is, if we take the V here and we roll him around the other V, how many somersaults will he make? Okay, you might think a half, maybe one, maybe two, four. Can you separate to solve? Can you think about breaking this problem up? It's a tricky problem. All right, so here we go. Watch what happens. So we start rolling it around. Nice job, Keith. Ah, look at that. There's half a somersault. Let's keep going. We get to the bottom. There's one full somersault. So obviously, when he finishes, you can go ahead and get this up there. I'll help you. We're going to get how many? 2 somersaults. How many people thought 2? I should have asked before. A few people. You're honest. That's good. So 2 somersaults. Now, watch something. Thank you very much. If I take this, let me take the other one, actually. If I take this guy, let's separate it. And imagine I roll it around a point, okay? Watch what happens. Around that point, it's going to be hard for me. How many somersaults? 1. That point is infinitesimal. Make that point bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. In fact, if I make it bigger, it's going to roll around it. So now it's not just rotating, but it's got distance as well. Well, imagine this is 6 feet circumference. So if I roll this along 6 feet on the ground, how many somersaults will it do? It'll do 1 somersault. So what I've done now is I've got rotation around a point plus distance. I've separated the problem, and we get 2. So there's an example of separating to solve. All right. Thank you. Next one is one that I'm extremely excited about. Probably the most difficult, but the most powerful. And I've never shown this before. I've used this for a decade, and it's not public, so I hope it's useful to you. It does require a tool, a special tool. So it requires a smart pen. LiveScribe Smart Pen. By the way, full disclosure, I'm no longer affiliated with a company, so I make nothing on this, but it's a tremendous tool. And how many of you used a smart pen before? Okay, a few. Let me describe it. When you write with a smart pen on paper, it digitizes what you write, and will make a copy of it and put it to your PC or your phone. Further, it optionally will record audio. So while you're writing, it will record audio and synchronize the audio with ink as you're writing, and allow you to go back to your notes, go to page 3, line 2, and touch the ink, and it has a speaker and a microphone in it. It'll play back the audio from that instant from the paper. Further, when you dock it, you'll get a copy of your notes. They will go to your PC or your phone. You can see them and play them like a movie. It's called a pencast. And you can touch it and click on it, and you can play at any point in time. Pencasting, LiveScribe Smart Pen Echo, I think it's on Amazon now. It's available. It's less than a couple $100. So again, this is not promotion. Careful. So this is so the idea here is something I call brain cycling. And the concept is to move between different modes of thinking, or of creating in the creative process. The 3 modes you'll move between will be you think, because imagine you are doing personal brainstorming. How do you personally brainstorm? You sit for a while, you think in the shower, you get an idea, you jot it down before you forget it. If you sit down alone and you start writing, frequently you'll write something, but you then have to type or write it out in longhand, and it takes a while. Another thing that happens is it becomes nonlinear. It becomes very linear, because when you're writing, it's a very cognitively intense process to write and create language. So when you write something, you have to focus linearly on the description of your writing, and it takes minutes to do so. In the meantime, other ideas are popping in your head, but they're lost. Or you've got to jot them down and stop and put them at the end of the document. So with brain cycling, what you'll do is you'll move between 3 states. You'll think, you'll write just little bits, quick notes, diagrams, outline, and then you'll speak. And when you speak, you assign your speaking to what you just wrote, and you'll cycle between these 3 states. In doing so, you end up with a self-documenting document that has pictures, diagrams, words, outlines, but allows you to move non-linearly among different ideas. So let me show you. Okay. Here we go. So I'll turn my pen on. and we're going to brain cycle. In fact, I thought about this. I brain cycled on this problem, which is fun. And I said, okay, I'm writing all down my ideas down, thinking TED, audience, how do I do this, communicate brain cycling? So I said, why not do a brain cycle on brain cycling? So here we go. So here's what I do. So I'm gonna comment a little bit, you'll see that, but watch me. So I start out in my thinking, and I start writing, and I go, I have terrible writing, by the way. So those are just pouring out. I've got all these ideas in my head. Then I stop, and down at the bottom of the page, there's a little button that I can touch, and I touch record. Now my pen is recording. So now I go back, and I go, oh, so this is a brain cycle. Here's what you do. You think, and you cycle between thinking, writing, and speaking. Notice how bad my writing is. It doesn't matter because I've got audio. And you cycle between these two. In doing so, you're using different parts of your brain, and we can look up what parts we are. In fact, what we need to do is we need to involve some research. Now what I've done is I'm moving out, I'm adding more notes because I'm supplementing with audio. Then I come back and I go, really, it's self-documenting. That's what's going on here. And I can tell you, having done this for years, you end up with more energy than you started with. Typically when you self-brainstorm, you get tired, you write and write and write, and you just don't want to. In this case, you keep going for hours. And it's really exciting and energizing. Now, when I stop, okay, and then I might stop, or I might pause and continue, and I just keep going. But when I go back and touch someplace, oops. You cycle between thinking, writing, and speaking. So wherever I touch, oops, too far, I'll just use this. These two. In doing so, you're using different parts of your brain, and we can look up what parts we are, in fact. So the point is, I now have this. Further, when I then dock my pen, this information can be wireless or otherwise. I get a copy of my notes, and I preloaded this, so I won't take time. But if we can switch to this screen. Can we bring that up? There we go. There's what happens. It gets copied off the paper, you can see, and I can click on it. And do we have audio? Oh, I have to plug it in. That will help. My fault. We got the audio over here. Over here. Here we go.
You speak and you cycle between
so
these
you can
three
see it draws the ink
brain,
the way I
which
drew
causes
it,
you to use different
and wherever
parts
I
of your
touch,
brain. And
like
when
self.
that happens, I'm really self-documenting because my pen's capturing the ink and the audio. Because right now, I'm able to move around from idea to idea thinking, again,
and so forth.
The energy that occurs there.
It is outrageously powerful. If we brought this to people on a broad basis, I think we could see some advanced thinking. Okay. So now, we've talked about problem to solve, getting the right problem to solve. We've talked wallowing in novelty, being sure that you absorb it. I've talked about filling your problem reservoir with multiple problems, embracing your nemesis. We have now dropping impossible and can't from your language, casting, shortening your speech with acronyms and short utterances, separating to solve, breaking problems apart, brain cycling, and now you've applied all these techniques, you have some amazing breakthroughs with all of your ideas, and now you want to take that idea that you've got, because you've solved it. You think, wow, I've got the solution. What do you do next? You take the idea that you've got, that solution that you're so proud of, and you put it in a box and you set it aside, and you say, I'm going to come up with another one. When I ask people on a team to do this, it's pretty tricky. So that's what you do. And then when you come up with that second idea, you put that in a box and you do it a third time. You will own your problem in a way that's extraordinary. So I'd like to practice that right now. And in fact, engage everyone here. I have a problem to solve, and there's a reward for it. So you can participate. In fact, if you can pull out your smartphones and go to sli.do, sli.do. You see it up here. Enter this event code. And what I'd like you to do is solve this problem. Oops. If you could pull the table off. Move this out of the way. Thank you. So here's the problem to solve. This is good. Yeah, go ahead and please enter. I'll take just a second, move this table. This is a tetrahedron. It's a 14-sided figure that moves around. I saw this in the History and Mystery of the Universe, Life and Times of Buckminster Fuller, and was fascinated, and I bought it, and I've used it since then for interviews. I'll ask people in an interview, I'll say, imagine you're given this, and here's my problem to you. You're given this, and you can play with this device. Move it around, squish it, and do things. And I also give you a bag with all the components. And you take this, and your problem is to give the components to a friend, and you say to the friend, I want you to build this, but they can't see it. And you have to describe how to build it with as few words as possible. Got it? You see it, you tell them how to build this with as few words as possible, really efficiently, and it has to be built correctly. So that's what I'd like you to do right now. I want you to figure out, imagine you can come up with the fewest words possible to tell somebody how to build this. To make it easier, I'm going to show you this a little bit larger. Go. Can we cue music? This is going to be fun. Thank you very much.